In this video, I'm going to show you how to make 3 simple book structures. Once you know how to do them, you can make all sorts of variations. They can be different sizes and formats. You can use completely blank paper. You can make a junk journal where you add lots of ephemera and found papers, or you could use it as a journal to write in or as a photo album. There's just so much potential with them. This first one is a simple stitch structure with a handmade cover. It could be any dimension you like, but this one is 15 centimetres by 15 centimetres, and I'm making the cover just a little bit larger. I want this one to have a spine of about 1 centimetre wide, so in order to make that neatly, I'm folding my cover in half, but so there's 1 centimetre exposed at the end. So I'm doing that on one side, and then I'm turning it so I've got another centimetre showing the other side. I'm using a folding tool, but you can just use a pair of scissors with a curved handle, and this helps you to get a really good crease. So because this is 15 centimetres square, I want my pieces of paper to be 30 centimetres wide, although some of them I'm keeping longer and then I'll fold them over. And you can either trim them all down to size first and stitch it and then it's all done, or you can leave some of them longer and tidy it up after. Obviously, the thicker your book, the sheets that are on the outside are going to be slightly longer than the ones on the inside. So if neatness is important to you, that's something to bear in mind. I've got about 10 sheets altogether. I'm now going to find the middle of my centre page and I'm going to mark it for a hole. And then I measure down 3 centimetres from the top and another 3 centimetres from the bottom and mark it again, and those are going to be my 3 holes. I'm using this tool called a stiletto, but anything pointed will do. But it's a good idea to put something underneath, like the polystyrene I'm using here, for the tool to go into. Just for safetiness. I do the top page and then I stack all the pages neatly together and use that as my template to pierce the other layers. And I do that in 2 stacks just because it's easier for the tool to pierce through. I then do the cover. Then you can use any sort of clip you have to hold the stack together to get ready for the stitching. I like to use a linen thread, but as long as it's strong, it doesn't really matter what you use. You sometimes see advice that you should wax it first, and I have done that with a beeswax candle, and that can be useful if you're going through a lot of paper, but I just find with these small blocks it's not really necessary. Measure your thread so it's approximately 3 times the length of the spine, and you'll have just a little bit more than you need, and you know that you've got the right length. So insert your thread through the middle hole, leaving a tail of about 10 centimetres. Bring it up through one of the end holes. Take it along to the other end hole. Go through this one and then go back through the middle. Now you want to finish this off with a knot. You could just use a granny knot, but if you use a square, or sometimes called a reef knot, it's really good because you can carry on tightening it. So if you've done it and you think your page is a little bit loose, you can just pull it tighter. And that's it. Couldn't really be much easier, could it? So my second book is a variation on the first one, as I'm going to make the same stitched insert, but this time I'm going to glue it onto an old book cover. And this is a really fun thing to do because you can find a book that just speaks to you in some way or just has an interesting cover. They're quite easy to find. Sometimes bookshops will have a section with the sort of really battered books and you can get them quite cheaply. I tend to gravitate towards ones that are about plants or insects or sort of natural things, and this one was actually a book all about clouds that was already falling apart, so I didn't really mind that I was taking it apart. So what I'm doing is I'm carefully cutting out the rest of the pages with a craft knife. And the spine needed a bit of reinforcement. You might find this once you've taken the pages out, and you can just use tape here. It is going to be covered up, so it doesn't really matter, but I didn't have any nice sort of cloth tape, so I thought I'd just use this bit of linen because I had it to hand anyway. And all I've done is glue it down, and you can use PVA for this. I use acrylic matte medium a lot because I've got it in bulk, because I use it both as a glue and a surface that you can paint on afterwards, so I've always got this to hand. So it's glued in, everything's all dried, and now I'm making my insert in exactly the same way as the first. For this one I've decided to use, I'm using sort of monochrome papers for this, so I've already sort of spent a while choosing ones that will go with this sort of theme. But the difference is with the first one is that now you're going to glue it in onto your cover. So you need to make sure that your first page, which will be the bottom page when you're stitching, is something that you don't mind not being able to see. You might want to see the inside but not the outside. I've just used some standard cartridge paper here. And again, I'm using the matte medium to glue it to the cover. And sometimes you can trim the page afterwards. But this is such a fun way that you can combine vintage and new and get a really unique book. It would be fantastic for a present for somebody because you could choose a cover that pertained to one of their interests, even if you just made it blank, so you could make them a journal or to mark a special occasion like a wedding or a holiday. I just think it's a really fun way to make a book. The last book I'm going to show you today is a little bit different, as I'm using a ring binder for it. Now I have my own tool. This is called a cinch tool, and it both makes the holes for your pages and also it helps you put the binder in. You don't have to have this. Printers will do bindings like this, so you could take your pages to a printer to do it. But if you think you might be making several of these books, it might be worth getting these. It's the sort of thing you can find quite cheaply on eBay and Gumtree, because people buy them and then maybe they find they don't use them very much, so they sell them on. And they're different makes as well. But I'll show you, but although it's slightly niche, I'll show you how it works. Alternatively, if you want to do a similar looking book, but you don't want to go to either the trouble of getting it, taking it somewhere, or buying your own tool, you can get individual ring binders, which I've used a couple of times, and I'll link a video here. I did a travel journal using that, and I go through it there. So for this one, I'm using sheets and boards, which I've covered for the front and back. And the dimensions of it are 12 centimetres tall. And then the width, I'd say the pages are 20 centimetres, but I added another centimetre on because I knew that I'd lose that to the binding. And what's good about this is that you're just using single sheets. So it's a brilliant way for using perhaps prints or other things you've made that you want to display rather than make them into double page spreads. There's a sort of formula for working out how big your book is and how many holes you need. And then you pull out pegs and then you've got the right number of holes, and then you use the lever to push down. And it does do quite a few pages at a time, but I'm doing it in two sections, and I'm doing the front board and the back board separately because for those I've used thicker card, and I think I used the boards that you get at the back of pads. I always keep those because they're just brilliant width. But you could use cereal packet, you could use cardboard packaging, anything you've got that's just slightly thicker than the paper. And you buy these binder in different widths, and I'm just cutting it down to size with a pair of pliers. And then the tool's got a place where you put the wire on, and then you can easily put your pages on. You have a little knob that you adjust, and you have to know what the width is of your binder, and it always says on the packaging, and then it will know how much pressure to put down so that you get a nice round finish. And then the last thing you have to do is just to use a pair of pliers to take over the ends because they're a little bit sharp, so you want to fold them in. So these are the three books that I've made, and I'm in real time rather than video time. I've been getting on quite well filling them, and I don't always do this, but I have got a slight theme for each book. So the first one I showed you is going to have, I'm using a shape. I've decided to have a lot of circles in it, and that's going to be both negative and positive, and I'm looking through all my collage collection for pieces that will work well in this. The second one, as I think I already mentioned, is going to have this monochrome theme, and I also thought that it lended itself to sort of silhouettes, seeing through images to things behind, and that made me think of winter plants and sort of seed heads. So that's the theme, and I've got prints of things like that in my collection already. So what I tend to do is I tend to do some collaging, and then I'll do some printing and some painting and some drawing. You know, not strictly. I might go back and do add other things all the way through, maybe add inserts, maybe add pockets. And the last one, I'm just going to try and make that really colourful without a particular subject theme. So there'll be a video soon where I share the progress that I'm making with these books. And if you do make one yourself, I would really love to see them. If you tag me on Instagram, I will repost it, and I'd just really love to see what you do with these structures.